Olivier Guittard is Managing Director of Global Strat, which is a geopolitical risk and security consultancy firm. I asked him why the authorities hadn't seen this coming.
It was unclear if he was on the terror watch list, but it has come out that he wasn't. But he was on the radar of security services since December of 2016 because he had boasted to some of his friends that he wanted to get weapons to kill police officers in France in retaliation for what was going on in Syria. So they arrested him in February, but they couldn't find any proof to hold him and to link him to any terror group. So they let him go at that point.
But he had served a long prison term for the attempted murder of 3 police officers, as I understand it. So he'd been out of jail, a year or so? And nobody seemed to think he was of any danger whatsoever.
Yeah, and on top of it, he got out earlier than his 15-year sentence, but under the condition that he would, check in with the police on a regular basis. But then, out of the blue, he disappeared. He went to Algeria, which he was not allowed to do. He was not allowed to leave the country, for that matter. And then came back, and then the judge found out that he was in Algeria and told him, "What were you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I was trying to get a wife there." And the judge didn't think that it was ground for putting him back in jail. So he was left in the open. And time and again, you and I discussed this, but the judicial system is very naive when it comes to jihadists.
Is it the judicial system, or is it the police in France there? Or is it a mixture of both?
No, the police is not naive. I mean, there's a huge infighting between the police and the justice. It's been going on for years, where police said, "Look, we arrest all those criminals, those terrorists," and then the judge decides on a whim to just free them. And you're right, it's not the judicial system because laws are there to be applied, but judges are very sentimental, it seems. We've seen in the case, you and I talked about the attack on the priest in Rouvray, in Normandy, in July. The 2 young terrorists were freed by a judge who thought they had really a change of heart and weren't jihadists any longer. So
arguably it's the legal system then, that there are loopholes within that have been exploited.
I would say that it's the judge's view on the law that is the problem.
Their interpretation. It's their interpretation of the law.
Exactly, because if you look at it, in the past 5 years, France passed 6 counterterrorism laws that are, give them the whole arsenal to deal with those issues. But unfortunately, time and again, those people just slip by.
In this particular case, the case of Karim Shirfi, is it known whether he was radicalized in prison?
No, that is not known. But look, the timing seems ominous. When you look about it, he was out for a year. And then after just a few months, he tells his friends that he wants to go and kill police officers because of Syria. So it seems an obvious conclusion, but for the time being, the prosecutor says that he hasn't had any indication that he radicalized in prison. But, how would they know?
At the moment, perhaps over the term of an investigation, that might emerge. At the moment, though, what we do know, as you say, is that he made these claims to friends that he wanted to kill police officers, and that at least came to the attention of the authorities, didn't it? The authorities were aware that this man had made these threats to kill police officers, and yet even the fact that they've been informed that he's making these threats, that didn't seem to alert the authorities enough to put him on the terror watch list.
Yes, I think you're right. They had him on their radar, but they didn't put him on the watch list. But in a case, Dalton, it doesn't matter because those people on terror watch list, we're talking about 15,000 people, just radical Islamists on that terror watch list. If he would have been the 15,001, it wouldn't have prevented him from attacking the police yesterday. I mean, being on the terror watch list, yeah, it's fine, but they can still monitor and track down only 40 people at one time. 40, that's it. So 40 out of 15,000. So I wouldn't blame them for not putting him on the watch list because the watch list is there to be, but it's impossible for them to actually act on it because they don't have the means.
Where did he get the gun from? An AK-47 is not your normal weapon of criminal activity, is it? It's a proper assault rifle. This is
Right. There's a huge. I mean, France and continental Europe is different from the UK. It's much easier to get an automatic weapon in France, and Belgium is the center of the trafficking of weapons with the former Soviet Union satellites, especially Serbia. So you look at weapons trafficking, it's Belgium and the ex-Yugoslavia, and that's why the link to Belgium is very, very troubling. The when you look at the claim of responsibility of Islamic State 2 hours after the attack, calling him Abu Yunus al-Belgiki, he has no links to Belgium from what we can see. So there's when you think about it, yesterday they went on a crazy mode to try to find a second suspect because usually Islamic State never get their communique wrong, and they're so it could be two things. Either his nom de guerre was al-Baljiki just because he wanted to be under the radar and we don't want to say, the Frenchman, which I don't believe could be. And second is that there was a second operative that was supposed to take part in the attack and didn't take part, but that is on the loose and that could take part into an attack before Sunday.
how in talking of Sunday, how will this brazen attack on the Champs-Elysees affect security in Paris in general, in France in particular, and also ahead of the presidential election? Are we expecting to see security step up across the country?
So they've done the maximum they could already starting about 10 days ago. They had intel as early as last week that there was a huge plot being prepared against either the candidates or the HQ of a presidential campaign. So they stepped up and they put 50,000 soldiers and police on the streets to prepare for the election. So they can't do more in terms of physical security. The second point is that they were very happy that thanks to the Brits, they foiled a major attack on Tuesday when they arrested two jihadists in Marseille. From what I heard from my sources, this was a plot that could have been to the scale of the November 2015 attacks. Those guys had 3 kilos of TATP explosives at major arsenal and were very ready to attack targets, most probably in Marseille. And we know that one of the candidates had a meeting in Marseille just the day after they were arrested. So security services were quite happy with that big catch. But the way I read the attack yesterday, that was very low grade, unsophisticated, really targeting police rather than going after tourists. Because you ask yourself, why did he go after, police rather than coming with his AK-47 and killing, dozens of people on the Champs-Elysees? So they've been very lucky, but there's been a pattern of Islamic State attacks, especially in France, that specifically target police or soldiers. So we talked about the Orly airport. The terrorists went right at the soldiers in the Louvre. The Egyptian jihadists went also after the soldiers, and now in the Champs-Elysees. This pattern of going after police and not soft targets. So possibly Islamic State had a huge bet on the elections. I mean, they made it clear for the past few months that they wanted attacks to take place for them to influence the outcome of the election, like in Madrid in 2004. So for them, it was a matter of pride that something would happen. So the way I read it is that Plan A, that was the major attack, was foiled, and then there was this Plan B that was, very amateurish, but that would have an impact on the election a little bit less than the previous attack, but by going after the Champs-Elysees was really the symbol.
Olivier Guittard, though, who's the managing director of Global Strat, which is a geopolitical risk and security consultancy firm.